Welcome back. And today I have one of the biggest privileges that I could imagine having. My good friend Andrew Bryant has agreed to do this interview, and I was so overwhelmed when he agreed to do this because he's one of the key figures I was hoping to interview for this series, because he's been an inspiration to me and so many other people within the Asian Professional Speakers of Singapore, the APSS that I mentioned earlier. So I don't want to talk for very long, but the reason why I came to Andrew today was recently at the convention he did the keynote speech for that, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible because it really hit home. And there was a catchphrase inside there that I'm sure nobody has forgotten. No speaker in that convention has forgotten the catchphrase, and I want to share it with you right now. It came as a nice kick in the backside when he said to us, when you started as a speaker, there was this sense of arrogance, the sense of unconscious incompetence, of not really knowing what's involved, and we said to ourselves, well, you know what? How hard could it be? And I want to ask Andrew to share with us really about how hard it actually is and how we can overcome that. Those are the stages of realization, of epiphany, of learning, of getting back down to what's real. So, Andrew, please, could you expand a little bit on the speech that you did for us at the APSS convention?
Sure. Well, I took everybody back 20 years to my very first paid speech. And this was in 1999. And a few months earlier, I'd seen my first professional speaker. I was at a health convention, and it was a doctor, a guy called Dr. John Tickell, and came on and gave an amazing speech about health and how everything in moderation except for fish, vegetables, and sex, which was just a great title. And what I loved about it was how he really simplified the health message. I had a health, medical background, so I understood it. Anyway, so I saw this guy, and I met him in the corridor, and I said, "Did you get paid for this?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, how much?" And he told me, and I went, "I could do that." And so I was riffing with a friend of mine, and I was saying, I want to get paid to speak, and he said, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And I said, "I don't know. I could let the speakers bureaus know that I exist." Now, anybody, I'm sure you're going to talk about speakers bureaus. Bureaus aren't interested in you unless you're already famous. So we're riffing, and he had a marketing background, and he said to me, "Well, go book yourself." And I said, "Well, how would I do that?" And anyway, so between us, and I didn't tell this in the story, so he didn't get as much credit as he should. His name was Tim, marketing guy, and he said to me, book yourself out. So I booked a coffee shop in West Perth, and we sold tickets to my first ever paid speech, which was called Health is Wealth, where I was combining my health knowledge with how that can improve your financial. And he had a background in financial marketing, and so we got a whole bunch of financial planners who had to fill in a holistic sort of aspect of the financial plan. And I was the speaker. So we sold tickets, got a coffee shop, so people came for breakfast and a speech. And I'd written a speech, and I thought, well, I can speak. I've got the gift of the gab. And then I'm looking at this room. I was sort of standing at the back, looking at this room filling up, and I wanted to go out the back and throw up. In fact, I think, it's 20 years ago, I think I went out the back and did a dry retch. And it wasn't a great speech, but it was really obvious to me that the arrogance, how hard could it be, actually got me started. So I don't think that initial arrogance is a bad thing. It gets us started in any entrepreneur. Any entrepreneur thinks, well, how hard could it be? If you already think it's going to be incredibly difficult, you wouldn't even start the journey, right? True. So I actually think the arrogance is a good thing. I mean, the French word entrepreneur, the word entrepreneur comes from the French entreprendre, which means to undertake the risk of a journey. And you wouldn't undertake the risk of a journey if you thought, I'm going to get eaten by crocodiles or boiled in a big pot by indigenous tribes. Anyway, so then in this speech, what I did was I used this story. I took everybody in their mind to the coffee shop, and then I juxtaposed that with a cognitive bias. Now I moved from working with bodies to working with minds. I studied psychology, and there's this great unconscious bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It came around about 1996. Jason Dunning, and I can't remember what Kruger's first name is. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is your incompetence of your own incompetence, right? And it's a lovely grid where the vertical axis is confidence and the horizontal axis is experience. And generally we start out on a journey to become a speaker, a journey to become an entrepreneur, with high confidence but low experience, which is the peak of stupidity, when we say things like, how hard could it be? Because we don't have any experience, right? And the Dunning-Kruger effect uses things like, if I said to you, do you know how a ballpoint pen works? And most of you would say, yeah, of course I know how to ball. Do you know how a helicopter works? Yeah, I know how a helicopter works. But if I actually got you to explain it in detail, you'd actually struggle. So most of us underestimate the domain knowledge in anything we engage in, right? And so speaking or coaching or whatever you choose, how hard can it be? You don't have an experience of the domain, so and you wonder why your plumber charges you so much, right? How many of us go, I'm not going to pay $150 for the plumber, I'm going to fix it myself. And then you make such a mess that when the plumber comes, you pay twice as much, right? Because you don't understand the domain knowledge of the plumber, right? So it's not just speaking. Anyway, so what I did in this speech was I took everybody, and by the way, the speech is available on my YouTube channel.
I was actually going to mention later. I'm gonna put a link below for the speech so you guys can watch the entirety. Yeah. Do it, please. Don't miss out because it's truly inspiring and enlightening. I highly recommend it.
So what I do is I explain the Dunning-Kruger effect, and then I mapped my own speaking journey on it. But simply put, the Dunning-Kruger effect starts us at the peak of stupidity. Then we get a bit of experience, and we drop down and go, whoa, there's more to this than I thought. And then we keep going, and we could hit the depths of despair when you think, I'm never going to get this, right? And we learn this with sport, right? I was at a water park in Bintan with my kids last weekend, and there was the cable ski, right?
Yeah.
And I've cable skied before, but I hadn't cable wakeboarded, right?
Okay.
So again, how hard could it be, right? And I got up pretty quick because I've windsurfed, etc. But taking those corners, it's pretty tough. Yeah. So you hit, and after falling off and getting tired, you hit the depths of despair. I'm never going to get this. But in any endeavor, if we have passion and we persevere, we're going to slowly climb up as we get more experience and more expertise. Our confidence grows. And I call this the slope of enlightenment, right? As we learn more, as you're doing right now, interviewing people, learning more, climbing the slope of enlightenment until maybe you reach the peak of sustainability where you have some experience and you have some skills. And at this point, you can say to yourself, trust me, it's complicated.
So the enlightenment comes after the drop of despair. What do you?
I think isn't that life? I mean, we really don't get enlightenment without some level of discomfort, right? You don't change your mindset until, like chemical substances, until heat is applied, right? And I think life gives us heat in various traumatic, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a financial issue, whether it's a romantic issue. I've been through all of the above. And as I say to my audiences, I would never wish adversity to anybody. I wouldn't wish it upon you, but neither do I not wish it upon you, because it's usually through the adversity that we really find out who we are, what we're made of, and what's really important to us. And then after that comes the growth. So I've been through this roller coaster from the peak of stupidity, the depth of despair, and up to enlightenment a number of times. I mean, I'm, in 2 weeks, I'm 2 years short of 60. So
never think, right?
I prefer to hear that from beautiful women, but I'll take it from you as well, right? I've been through this roller coaster a number of times, and you get very Buddhist around this too shall pass, right? Even if you're at the peak of everything's going well, this too shall pass, and you're going to go through the roller coaster again. Something else is going to happen. You're at the depth of despair. This too shall pass as well. It gives you a sense of eternity around that. Nothing is permanent, right?
Absolutely. And that was the most encouraging thing to me from the speech, because we've all been there. We've all been there in that despair situation. Like, I'm never going to get this. How am I going to? I see these giants, people like yourself, achieve so much, but we failed to see what happened before that. And you shared your journey.
Yeah.
And that was like, he's a normal person. He's a normal person.
I was thinking that during your introduction. It's like, don't build me up too big here. I put my trousers on the same way, right, as everybody else. And I think it's a very dangerous thing to elevate, anybody too much. Yeah. Because it's a form of self-discounting, right? Whoever's, wherever anybody's at, that's where they're at that's their journey. It's not your journey. And the same thing, we elevate some people and then we look down on others, and that's the arrogance, right? You never know what somebody's story is, and I think this is what humility is really about, is to realize you just don't know what anybody's backstory is. And if we can stop judging people, the more that we can recognize this weakness in ourselves, the less judgmental we are of other people, because we don't know where they're at.
That is so true, and that's why I was so grateful. Andrew was, when I first joined APSS, he was the first person that agreed to meet with me for a meal, for a lunchtime. And obviously I had a very high estimation, I still do, of Andrew, but at that meal he was just so open and shared so freely and so humbly about stuff where I realized, you know what, this is the kind of person I want to be, this is the kind of model I want to follow, that doesn't have this lofty opinion, etc. of itself. You have your success that speaks for itself, but when you're down to earth human being, you don't judge anybody, and you know where they are in their journey, and I've been there, so let me support you where you are rather than from where I am. That's what really helped me. But also I joined one of your courses, and when you speak about this humility and this awareness and self-awareness about who you are as a person, how to treat other people, that resonated in some way through the course that I did with you for executive presence. And that was really amazing. Now, Andrew's theme is self-leadership, okay? And I'm sure self-leadership would not exist without self-awareness.
Yes.
So when we touch on these two subjects, could you explain how that's developed for you, the theme of self-leadership? Because I think it's amazing.
Well, it has grown, and I've been talking about self-leadership since about 1999, when I joined a Speakers Association, right? And I joined what was then called the National Speakers Association of Australia, which has changed its name to PSA, Professional Speaking Association of Australia. And I actually sat down with somebody. So, this is one of the reasons I pay it forward, is people have paid it into my life, and I'm happy to pay it forward. And I sat down with the guy who was a psychologist, and he said, well, what do you speak about? Now, I had a background in physiotherapy, I had a postgraduate in traditional Chinese medicine, I'd studied hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, neurosemantics, and psychology. So I had a background in the physical and I had a background in the mental, and I had this, at this point, a fairly nascent idea around self-determination, around how you can, because I'd worked with athletes who'd set the goal, done the work, got the results, right? And fairly basic principle, but I had this model around, nobody's going to come up on a white horse and rescue you, right? You're going to have to do it for yourself, right? And so I was talking to this psychologist, and I was telling him, this was my premise, that this is what I want to talk about, this is what I want to empower people to do, whether it's within health or finance, etc. He said, so you're talking about self-leadership? And I went, yes! That's exactly what I'm talking about, self-leadership. Now, little did I know that there actually, and the reason he knew the term was there had been some psychologists who had written about self-leadership before, but they were academics, and so the topic was not particularly popular. It's a bit like if you think about emotional intelligence, you think about Daniel Goleman, right? Okay, yeah. But he wasn't the guy that did the original research. It was a bunch of academics, but he was the one that popularized it. So whilst I'm not the inventor of self-leadership, and even the concept of self-leadership goes back to Plato or Socrates, or it goes back to Epictetus, or everybody said, it's not what happens to you, but how you handle it, right? I have popularized, because for the last 20 years I've been talking about self-leadership, and it's now super popular. Everybody's. And now the challenge is that there's no agreed construct to self-leadership. And so I've got an article I'm hoping to get published soon in Harvard Business Review, which, whilst I'm not the only one that's writing it, there's some very good PhDs coming out in self-leadership now. Nobody's agreed on the construct. And self-leadership is grounded in other psychological and sociological studies. But the model that I have is that you have an access of context, right? Wherever you are, everything is context dependent. I get very annoyed with motivational quotes that don't have context, right? Step out of your comfort zone. Well, that could be great advice, or it could be terrible advice. It depends on the context, right?
Exactly.
So everything starts with context. Self-leadership in North Korea is going to be very different from self-leadership in North Carolina, right? or North London, right? So context matters. Self-awareness is where everything happens. And then self-awareness moves into self-regulation. So we all have an element of self-leadership because we self-regulate. We're both we got a memo with dark shirt day, but we both, we both managed to get. I'm assuming Mummy didn't get you dressed today, right? No. So I got myself dressed. You got yourself dressed. We managed basic hygiene and transportation issues. So we self-regulate very well, right? Or do we, right? So some people are addicted to sugary foods or alcohol or Netflix or
Instagram
or porn, right? And there's a level of self-regulation that we need to have, right? And how much of that? So the self-regulation or self-management piece is well and truly studied, particularly in the health model. If you're a diabetic, you need to self-regulate your blood sugar. If you're an arthritic, you need to self-regulate your medication and your exercise, right? So, but what do really successful people do in terms of self-regulation? What do they do first thing in the morning? The whole concept of eat the frog first, right? Do the most unpleasant thing first, get that out of the way, and then the rest of the day is going to be well.
I've never heard that. That's
awesome. Eat the frog first. There's a Navy SEAL guy wrote a book, Make Your Bed, right?
Yes.
Right. Do that first thing in the morning. That's self-regulation, right? So we have self-awareness. Who am I? What's important to me? What is my personality? Self-regulation. What are my habits? And then the third part that's around this axis of context is self-learning. And how am I learning new things? Because school just prepares you to learn. It doesn't teach you anything that's particularly useful. I mean, mathematics and English, etc., are very useful frameworks, but it's what you do with them afterwards. I mean, school doesn't teach you how to get a loan, how to repay the loan. It doesn't tell you. It tells you how to get a loan if you do student loans in the United States, right? But it doesn't tell you how to repay the loan. It doesn't tell you how to start a business, how to have a relationship. It doesn't teach you anything particularly useful in those. You're going to have to learn those things. And the self-leader sets about self-learning. And they're able to take the feedback and or seek out feed forward. As my good friend, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, is always saying, the smart people are reaching out. What you're doing on this interview series is finding people like me, is you're reaching out for feed forward. What do I need to do to accelerate my process? Exactly. So you're clearly demonstrating self-leadership in this moment. So that's the model. Obviously there's depth to all of that, and I can talk for eons about all of the above. And that's the framework that I'm constantly looking at, whether I'm researching it or whether I'm curating other people's research and making it accessible to people is how you can do that. So the question is how much self-leadership you have. And I use a metaphor of the speedometer with going fast is towards your goals is a good idea with going slow. And as with driving, we're never always going at, if you're on a German Autobahn in a good car, you can do 180 kilometers an hour, right? You wouldn't try that in Singapore, and you wouldn't try it on a bad road, and you wouldn't try it in a bad car. So you've got to look after the car, you've got to choose the road, and then you put your foot down. But there are always things that accelerate us and slow us down. So as a self-leader, and as you as a self-leader, I'm not always doing 180. I still have my moments. I still have things will come up, and I'll have a pity party about something. I'll slow down. The difference is, as a self-leader, I will recognize I'm having my pity party. I will take ownership of my pity party, and then I'll be able to put my foot on the accelerator much faster.
Oh, that's valuable.
Yeah. So you asked me before we turned the cameras on. As you and I have shared some life challenges. I really don't want to go there on this video, but you paid me the compliment that I came back, right, that I pushed through. Well, I was able to push through because I had the frameworks to deal with the adversity. We're all going to face adversity, as I said earlier. How quickly, the resilience is how quickly you bounce back. And that's really the test of your self-leadership.
I'm just taking things in now at the moment, to be honest with you. And some of the stuff I've heard before, I watched your videos, I watched some of your speeches. But just getting that reminder is so valuable to me. Thank you so much for sharing that. But Andrew said he can talk for eons about this. We could listen for eons, but we don't have time in this interview. But you have started doing online courses and content at the moment.
Sure. So self-leadership is, everybody has it, right? And it's a nice to have, but nobody knows, well, what's the value proposition, right? If the value proposition was your next promotion, how much is that worth to you? If the value proposition is your next pitch for your idea for venture capital funding, how much is that worth to you? And the monetization of self-leadership, i.e. what is that value is through the process of executive presence. Is when we have self-leadership, we're much more influential and impactful to others. We project confidence, we project gravitas and substance. And we can do that under pressure because, as we say, we have resilience. And so that function I call executive presence. And you have access to a free training that I did on that. It's a webinar, and it's a very easy URL, webinar.selfleadership.com. All my other things like access to books, etc., is at learning.selfleadership.com. Yes.
I'll put the links anyway, even though they're really easy to remember.
Webinar or learning at both.selfleadership.com. And so, yeah, do take the webinar. Obviously, if at the end of the webinar you see value, then there's an invitation to do some more work with me. Obviously, we all in some way sell our skills and expertise for money, but I like to give a lot of value up front, and if people get that value and they want to engage me, then I'm happy and they're happy.
Okay, and I'm a testament to that because I got the value first, and then I went for the executive presence workshop, and it was a full day workshop. I took only 2-3 takeaways from there, but it changed everything because of that. I wouldn't be here doing this interview if it wasn't for that kind of training and that kind of teaching, that kind of encouragement that you gave. So before I was very much more timid, much more quiet, and I'll give away one tiny thing that you gave away in the executive presence workshop, which helped me the most, is it said close your eyes and think of one time when you felt like you were just in the zone, when you were just in your element, where you felt the most powerful, the most confident, and you can always just mentally, because your brain doesn't know the difference between past and present and what's like, if you can mentally go there, you can exude that in the presence. And I'll be honest with you, that's exactly what I did before every single speech, before every single training. It's like, where was I in the zone? I've got my own little place, you'll have your own place. And that was over a year ago that we did that.
Oh, it works, and you're not the only person that got transformed. I mean, you'll see on the webinar a number of testimonials of that. And I call this your vessel of confidence. And in fact, again, on the webinar, I give an introduction to that. Obviously, you can go deeper into it. So, hope your viewers get that value, and great to see you transformed.
Thank you so much. Okay, we've been here for a while already, but it was well worth it. So thank you so much for your time. We're going to leave you with, before we started the video, you shared a quote with me, if you can remember it off by heart, that somebody shared with you.
The quote, you want that quote?
I would love to have that quote because it is so powerful. The first part of the quote we've often heard, but the second part is what really hit home for me today. And while Andrew finds that, I want to thank you guys again. I'm thanking Andrew for this. I'm so grateful. I thank, again, APSS, because I would not have met Andrew if it was not for APSS and built the relationship. So again, my advice, if you're an aspiring speaker, aspiring trainer, or wanting to get into this field, the best thing you could do is to get into a speaker association. And again, if you do join a speaker association, join to serve. Not for what you're going to get out of it, join to serve. Inevitably, you'll meet the right people and you'll build the right relationships.
There it is.
There we go.
So I was interviewing a fantastic Gestalt coach, Dorothy Simonovich from Canada, and she gives this lecture in one quote: "Your perception of me is a reflection of you. Your response to you, my response to you is an awareness of me."
I'll leave you to think about that. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Ciao.